Okay, today we're going to talk about some ways that humans impact the environment, and specifically, we're going to discuss the way that humans impact our oceans. Our oceans are a super important part of the planet. They provide a home or a habitat to so many different things. And also, they help humans live by providing food and things like that. So, the human impact on the oceans is a very important thing. There are going to be three big categories of human impacts on our oceans. The first one is dumping. That's going to be pollution or anything that goes into the water that should not be there. We have overharvesting, which is overfishing or removing too many resources from the oceans. And the last thing we're going to discuss is going to be our coral reefs and how humans destroy them, but also on the positive side, how humans repair our coral reefs. So the first type of human impact is dumping, and this is going to be anything that we are putting into the ocean that shouldn't be there. It includes trash, which is going to be mostly plastics, microplastics, and non-biodegradable materials. So things that cannot break down naturally. They collect in our oceans and then they just sit there causing harm. It's also chemical dumping and things like oil spills. So first we have our dumping of trash. This is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's a real giant collection of trash that is circulating in our ocean. What happens is the currents of the ocean, where the Arctic current is coming down and the equatorial current is coming up and they meet, creates kind of a vortex or a swirl of water due to convection. And anything that's sitting in the ocean, so any kind of plastic, trash, garbage, any of that, sort of gets caught in this little vortex and gathers up together. So this picture shows some of the different types of trash that are in this garbage patch. There's plastics, there's nets. They've found things like Legos and computer monitors, all kinds of stuff. And all of this trash is just gathering together and growing larger and larger. Some of the estimates say that the Pacific Garbage Patch could be the size of Texas. So it is getting really, really big. This is a problem, of course, because this giant island of trash is forming in our oceans, and it affects our oceans and it affects our marine life. So the following pictures are a little bit graphic, but they're going to show some of the effects on dumping of garbage on our marine life. So what happens when we dump this trash and these plastics and all kinds of stuff into the oceans is animals get caught in them, like turtles and dolphins and things like that. They get caught in the plastic nets or the plastic soda rings or whatever, and it can kill them or cause them to be deformed, like the turtle on the left. The bird on the right has ingested all of this plastic. You can see bottle caps and little pieces of plastic. The bird doesn't know that these things are not insects or small fish, things that it can eat. What happens is birds and also fish will eat all of these plastics thinking that they're food, and then they die and their bodies are just full of plastic. So anything that we dump into water has a pretty good chance of ending up in an ocean, especially if you live somewhere coastal. And so it's really important to make sure that we recycle all recyclable trash and that we dispose of other things properly so that they don't contribute to ocean pollution, which of course is very damaging to our marine ecosystems and the things that live there. The next thing we're going to talk about is oil spills. About 10 years ago in April, the cap was blasted off of an oil pipeline in the Gulf of Mexico. This was called the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. It's the worst, most recent oil spill that we have had. What happened was 134 million gallons of oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico, and 1,300 miles of the Gulf Coast was coated with oil just in the U.S. So from Texas to Florida, the whole coast was coated in oil from the spill. The oil in the water can only be removed in certain ways. They can use skimmers to scrape it off, they can burn it off, but it doesn't disappear on its own. What you can see in the left picture is all of those kind of shiny reflective parts of the water. That's oil floating on top, and that's toxic to the ecosystem, the fish, the plants, and the other wildlife. On the right, you can see a bird that is completely coated in oil. A bird completely coated in oil cannot live normally. It can't fly. It can't clean the oil off of itself, and essentially it's toxic to the animals. So we have to go in and clean these things up. This oil spill was an accident, and a lot of them are, but it's still a really big threat to our ocean ecosystems. Overharvesting is when we are overusing marine resources. The biggest one that we have is overfishing. This is where we are taking too many fish from the ecosystems for food and to sell, and we are removing those fish or those organisms from the ecosystem. As you guys know, removing an organism from an ecosystem can have very detrimental effects on that ecosystem. It reduces the biodiversity and thus reduces the overall health of the ecosystem. It also disrupts the food chains because we are removing large numbers of organisms from that ecosystem, and we are basically disrupting the food chain or the food web in the ecosystem. So here are some pictures of overfishing. In fisheries or places where they use fish especially for money and for food, they will bring out huge nets and ships, and they will catch thousands and thousands and thousands, if not more, fish every day. And these fish are all dumped onto the boats, and then they're made to sell for food or to sell for money, and they're removed from the ecosystem, which really harms the ecosystem. So here are a couple of examples of how humans are taking so many fish from the ecosystems to make profit and causing damage to the ecosystems. The next thing that we talk about is coral reef destruction. Coral reefs are not only beautiful, but they are very important for ecosystems. They provide a habitat for many organisms, and they provide food and protection for many more. A healthy coral reef is a sign of a healthy ocean ecosystem. When the coral reefs start to die, the ecosystem is on the decline. Human destruction includes our physical destruction of these coral reefs. So we pull boats up into the water and scrape them and break them. Divers go down and break them. Sometimes people go scuba diving and they take pieces of the reef home with them because it's pretty. And sometimes our fishing also damages the coral reefs. Also, pollution by debris or trash and other chemicals can harm the coral reefs as well. Increasing the acid levels in the ocean can be destructive to the coral reefs. Just in general, we are not doing a very good job of protecting these coral reefs. Here's a picture that shows a healthy coral reef versus a unhealthy coral reef. So on the left you can see a lot of biodiversity. You can see fish and plants and beautiful brightly colored coral reefs. This is a healthy coral reef ecosystem. On the right you can see that the corals are white, gray. They don't look very healthy, and you don't see any fish or anything swimming around because these coral reefs have been destroyed and are no longer a healthy part of this ecosystem. One thing that humans have started to do is repair coral reefs. And what they do is they make artificial reefs for the corals to grow on, and that helps them to repair and revive those coral reefs. So one way that they do this is actually pretty cool. It's with shipwrecks and other large things that are at the bottom of the ocean. So in this picture, we're looking at a part of a ship with the railings, and the scientists, the marine biologists, have created a place for the corals to grow on this sunken ship. And the corals are starting to grow all over these railings and come back to life, building a new coral reef there. Other things they use are coral trees and coral farms. And what they do is they create a structure for the corals to grow on, and then once the corals are healthy, they can move them to a safe place to grow naturally. So we have begun to repair and fix these coral reefs that we've destroyed through artificial reefs. So that is one positive effect that humans have had on the ocean ecosystem. It's not all negative. And that's it.